Made possible by our members and the following.
Hi, I'm David Schaffnacher. Are you tired of seeing me on MPT? Well, I know these guys are, but in order to see less of me, you need to give more to MPT. So become a member today. Thank you.
Tonight on Direct Connection, new research on chemical changes in the body that could offer an early warning sign of heart trouble. That's tonight live at 7:30 on MPT.
Public Square on MPT. It's TV worth watching.
Next time on Frontline, they make big money
It's all about information.
by paying big money for information.
What do you know that other people don't?
$1 billion is coming into the market in 2 hours.
How in the hell is that legal?
Inside the government's investigation into one of Wall Street's most successful hedge funds.
How does anybody make 60% a year?
The feds are asking that right now.
To Catch a Trader, a Frontline exclusive.
Tuesday night at 10 on MPT.
I grew up in Harlem during the Depression, but I was extremely fortunate to have an opportunity to go to college, tuition free. When I retired, I thought if I can even help one person go to college, I'll have done something really great. So I support one student with a scholarship. I see the values of PBS in sync with my values. And just the way I want to pass on a legacy of education, I would like to pass PBS on to the next generation. That's why I've included my PBS station in my estate planning. I like to think that PBS is concerned with our soul. If your soul is in the right place, you're giving back.
They only had one chance. Desperate men on a desperate mission to get home. Now, can 6 modern adventurers survive this epic journey?
I'm soaking wet, hundreds of miles from anywhere. Ah!
Whew. My God, it's hard work. Gotta start paying attention.
Wednesday night at 10 on MPT.
Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in for Direct Connection. Coming up tonight, new research on subtle changes in the body that could offer an early warning sign of heart trouble. That's ahead. But first tonight, the burning issue of light bulbs. As of January 1st, it is illegal to manufacture or import these old-fashioned incandescent bulbs. The newer bulbs save a lot of energy, but they can also be really confusing to shop for. Joining us tonight to answer some questions is John Doyle, Director of New Business Development at OneLightBulbs.com. John, thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
OneLightBulbs.com, actually based here in Maryland.
Yeah, so we're excited. We've actually started here in 1977, have over 100 years of experience in the lighting industry.
Well, so back in the day, this was pretty much it for the lighting industry, was these things. What have you seen as there's been all this publicity about the ban taking effect? And I guess I ought to clarify, possession is still okay. It's manufacture and import that's now not allowed.
That's correct. The legislation was passed in 2007, 2008, banning the manufacturing of those, as you said, in 2014. And ultimately, CFLs have been around for a while, but it's grown. As anything, we've been conditioned over many years to take a regular light bulb, put it in, and replace it. But the cost effectiveness of this investment is significant, and we're excited to bring it to the marketplace and have value.
Yeah, I don't really want to focus tonight on the political debate about the wisdom of banning these things. Obviously, they're less efficient. It's an older technology. The new bulbs get to be pretty confusing for people, but I'm curious if on the website you've seen any sort of run on the incandescents as this January 1st date was approaching.
It's interesting, that question. Yeah, ultimately, people are started stockpiling them a little bit, but the compact fluorescents have really taken off. People are realizing the benefit from an investment standpoint of savings in electricity, and I think marketing, meaning education, and that's one of the things we focus on, has made a real difference in allowing people to understand the benefits and the aesthetic value.
So you don't personally have a crate of the old ones buried in the backyard or anything?
No, we switched over many years ago, and we're excited about offering that to the consumer marketplace as well as commercial.
Let's focus on the different technologies that are out there. I held up one of these, the little curly light is familiar to people. They've been out for a while. They're getting way better in terms of starting up faster, different color temperatures, CFL, compact fluorescents. What are the pros and cons of these?
Well, again, it lasts 10 times longer. It's a little bit more investment up front, but when we look at it from a green standpoint, our belief is going green, everyone benefits. So again, 10 times longer. The Kelvin temperature, they've gotten a lot brighter and a lot quicker they get to the level.
Let's spend a minute on Kelvin temperature, because that's one of the things, in the old days you needed a lot of light. You thought maybe I'll get the 75-watt bulb. If you wanted, it was a closet, you wanted a little light, you get the 40. That was all people needed to know about numbers. You've got this display with these numbers like 2700 K Kelvin.
Yes.
What does that mean?
Well, ultimately it means the brightness of the light. The wattage itself is just what it burns. So if we wanted to show the difference with a 2700K, which is typically what 40 and 60 watt and 75 watts we've been out there with, but it's standard light.
And that's talking about the color temperature of
Correct.
it. I mean, they use lumens for brightness, I guess, but
Correct.
The color temperature of a 2700, maybe let's turn it on, see what happens here. That's your old-fashioned incandescent. That's also around 2700K?
Ultimately, that's exactly what it is, and then the difference is more of a yellow light that we've been used to growing up under the lamp shades. What they've been able to do is a 60 watt and now down to a 13 watt with a compact fluorescence. So the savings is significant, and if you want to just take a look and see the similarity.
So the CFL you had here, it can be hard to tell at home, but it looks very similar in terms of the light that you're getting out of it.
Correct. And now they make 4100K, which is a brighter, whiter light, and a lot of people really think that that's beneficial depending on where you're utilizing it, commercially or even in the home.
Well, let's fire that one up.
Okay. Then let's take a look.
Unless we're going to blow a fuse here.
Now, an LED, if you'll take a look at the brightness of this light.
Yeah, and I think people will be able to see at home that it's a little bluer.
Yes. Again, the higher the Kelvin temperature, the change in terms of the light, whether it's yellow and goes to brighter white and then significantly higher.
All right, let's take some phone calls. Remind everybody, if you have a question, give us a call. We'll have the number on the screen. You can also tweet a question to us. Our Twitter address is @MPT News. Let's talk to Melissa in Baltimore City. Melissa, thanks for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a concern about the new lights. I heard them saying about how to clean up properly when you drop the bulbs, and like if the residue is left on a carpet or a sofa or something, what would that do for my health?
Okay, Melissa, thanks very much. Great question. Let's shut these things down before we blind everybody at home. And it says right here on this little light bulb that it, mercury disposal and a web address for the EPA. So these things have a little bit of mercury in them.
Yes, they do.
Which obviously concerns people.
And I think that your point well taken, and a very good question by your caller, is ultimately the EPA, and on their website, shares with you how to go about the correct aspect in the event that a compact fluorescent falls and breaks. But again, it happens very rarely. And as we were talking about earlier, recycling them is very, very easy nowadays. There's a lot of recycle centers. So ultimately, it's like anything else. You take care of it, and it'll take care of itself.
But you don't throw these in the trash. And I've taken them to Lowe's or Home Depot, where right by the door they'll have a little bin for proper disposal of them.
Yeah, very, very easy, and a number of facilities around nowadays that take care of that. And again, the incandescents were thrown in garbage cans for many, many years, and it's a lot better for the environment. So from that standpoint, yes, very easy to dispose of them correctly.
The hotter, not literally hotter, but the newer technology, the thing that's really developing quickly is the LEDs. And you see them now where they actually look very much like the familiar old light bulb. I've only seen them up as high as about 60 watts in light equivalent, and they use a fraction of the actual wattage. And the light that comes out of those, I think, is more comparable to this old-fashioned bulb.
Interesting you say that. As we look at torpedo lamps and LEDs, they last 30 times longer. From that standpoint, again, and a little bit more investment, very commercially oriented, unless it's specific aesthetic lighting that you're utilizing in your homes. And again, just a wonderful light. Again, a little bit more investment, and seen a lot of people over the last number of years starting to realize the benefits of that.
Let's talk to Gail in Stafford County, Virginia. Gail, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Hi. I have 2 new lamps, but they require a 3-way bulb. Can you use this kind of new bulb in there and not worry about the 3-way?
Thank you for the phone call. I don't know that part, but I do know that the 3-way bulbs are exempt from the ban, so you'll still be able to buy an old-fashioned 3-way incandescent. But are there better alternatives?
Yes, you can still buy a 30, 70, 100, or a 50, 100, 150 in a standard incandescent. The benefit now, when CFLs first came out, they weren't dimmable. In the last 18 months, a significant progress they've been able to make. And so that lamp, again, from an investment standpoint, much more that you save in terms of with the electric. So a significant advance in the technology.
Helen in Harford County on the line. Helen, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Hi. I have a fixture that I tried the new light bulb in, and it just didn't operate.
Huh. Do you know if it was supposed to be a 3-way or any distinct kind of features?
It was a standard featured light over the mirror in the bathroom, and it just wouldn't work.
Okay, thanks very much for the phone call. Any thoughts?
Well, again, I think you might be talking about a vanity light. And sometimes as you have vanity lights, they get older. Again, the technology is consistent. It should be utilized and be able to work in that aspect. But sometimes what you need to do is just check the fixture itself.
What's the craziest, most expensive light bulb you have on your website?
Well,
you've got some specialty, professional, unusual things.
Yes, we do. And the range of product line that we cover is expansive, all the way from utilization in hospitals for tuberculosis, which has come back quite a bit in killing germs within the operating room or regular patient's room, all the way to grow lights. It really expands across the board in terms of what we're going to be able to offer, and from a consumer and your audience, a significant savings.
Arthur in Allegheny County. Arthur, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. How about photography? How's the tint affected for silver highlight and the newer cameras?
Okay, thanks very much. Thoughts on that?
That's one of the areas is more specific to that type of technology. They really haven't gotten there yet or haven't been able to arrive. It's something that is continuing to be developed. It's been around for a long time, so it's progress that's still in the making.
One thing I read, I think it was the LEDs, supposedly, and maybe it was not all of them, it was a special brand or something, don't attract bugs. You've seen those, the yellow bug lights that people have out back behind the house? I've read, and I'll have to test this next summer, that at least certain LEDs don't have whatever frequency of ultraviolet light or whatever it was that drew the bugs in.
Well, it's interesting. UV light, which has been around many years. Yellow bug lights have been used since back in the 70s when I first got involved. Again, it's been a wonderful product, but the evolution of that is a lot better. And I think because, again, the range of lighting is significantly more compared to a regular incandescent lamp that we might put outside on our porch or underneath a fixture.
Where do you think it's all heading? I mean, the trend continues, I guess, that the newer technology, the more people buy it, the cheaper it gets to manufacture, and the quality gets better and the price comes down.
That's exactly right, Jeff. Over the years, starting back in 2007, 2008, when we first got involved, it was significantly higher, the investment. Over the years, through the more individuals who have been educated about it, the price has come down. The manufacturing is significantly more than it used to be. So obviously that variable helps in terms of bringing the cost down.
Juanita in Prince George's County, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Pepco has been calling, wanting to come to your home and bring you bulbs and whatnot. They came to my house last Thursday, and I'm so upset. One fellow told me they'd come back, but they put bulbs. There were 3 people, and they didn't let me come with them. So in 2 of my rooms, they put in a bulb that's a new kind, and when I turn on the switches, all I get is a dull gloom, like you're walking into a cavern. And then if you wait a little while, it comes on. No amount of money would put those bulbs in my house. I was not pleased with a lot of things Pepco did. I'm sorry to say that.
Juanita, thank you very much for calling. I hadn't heard that the power company was actually doing that. Obviously, check their ID first. But I tried this one out earlier, and it was an instant on. I don't know what they've done in terms of the technology. No, I have some, and I've had them at home for a while, where you flip the switch, and yeah, you need to come back 5 minutes later if you want to see some light. But they do make instant on bulbs.
Originally, that's exactly what occurred, is the technology was not there at OneLightBulbs.com. One of the things that we carry and exclusively sell is that instant technology. So I would imagine some of those lamps that have been put in there are just not the old T3 technology. The lamps are bigger, and as you said, it takes longer to ramp up, and the new technology today should take care of that.
All right, John Doyle is with OneLightBulbs.com. Thanks for shedding some light on all this. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Jeff, and appreciate it, and OneLightBulbs.com does as well.
Thank you very much. And just ahead tonight, how new research showing earlier signs of potential heart problems could affect patients. We'll be right back.
One of the most valuable tools for journalists is a lot older than smartphones and social media.
That's right, the Freedom of Information Act.
But getting documents from government agencies is still cumbersome and time-consuming.
Especially in an era when officials want to keep embarrassing materials secret.
Well, the website Muck Rock tries to help reporters and researchers navigate the bureaucratic maze.
Muck Rock, which sounds suspiciously like muckraking, has you submit an online request for public records, then acts as your advocate.
The website emails or faxes your request to the right office, even using snail mail if necessary.
Imagine that. And Muck Rock says it will help analyze the data that you dig up.
The site, which is funded by the Sunlight Foundation, runs into obstacles. About a quarter of its federal requests are still awaiting a response after 3 months.
Most popular target by far is the FBI, followed by the CIA and the Pentagon.
Muck Rock's co-founder has been trying to get documents from the super secret National Security Agency. And that's your daily download.
Next time, Antiques Roadshow is flying high with terrific treasures from Tulsa.
This is the most exquisitely carved ivory tusk I have seen.
Wow!
Serious? I'm serious. I won't have to depend on just Social Security, I guess.
Don't miss these amazing moments and more next time on Antiques Roadshow.
Tonight at 9 on MPT.
In this week's Your Health segment, Dr. Christopher D. Filippi, an associate professor of medicine at the University of Maryland School of Medicine and cardiologist at the University of Maryland Medical Center. Doctor, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Specialize obviously in heart disease, but heart failure is a subset of that. Obviously, we focus a lot on heart attacks, and people think about that as a major type of heart ailment. Talk a little about heart failure and what it is.
Sure, in a way, heart failure is a victim of our own success.
over the past 2 decades, we've made dramatic inroads in reducing death related to heart attacks, or what we call in the business myocardial infarction. So people are living longer, and as they live longer with heart disease, often that progresses to heart failure. Heart failure really exists in 2 varieties. We think of the classic heart failure, which is the failure of the pump to squeeze adequately, allowing fluid or blood to build back up and accumulate in the lungs or in the legs and so forth and lead to shortness of breath. But just as common, particularly in older individuals, is heart failure with what we call preserved ejection fraction. In other words, the heart is squeezing adequately, but pressure builds up within the heart because the heart stiffens with age or due to other diseases such as kidney diseases and so forth.
So those are people who have not had a heart attack?
Those are people who typically not had a heart attack, or they've had a very small heart attack, but death of the heart muscle isn't a major part of that problem.
How can that be detected? Because it sounds like in the early going, the symptoms are subtle.
Yeah, so when patients present, the presentations can be relatively similar, and then we differentiate those by doing a common test, an ultrasound or an echocardiogram, to identify whether the heart's squeezing adequately or not squeezing adequately. There have also developed over the past decade or become available several blood tests. One blood test that's commonly used, that's available in almost all hospitals, is called B-type natritic peptide. And that's important to recognize that the heart functions as more as not just a mechanical pump, but in fact is also an endocrine organ. Has a lot of regulatory functions, so that this hormone, as it's called, this B-type natritic peptide, gets expressed or released by the heart when the heart muscle gets stretched or the pressure increases. It causes the kidneys to increase urination. It causes the blood vessels to dilate. So it's a counter-regulatory chemical or hormone.
How early can that be picked up in the disease process?
Well, that's what's really interesting. So originally it was approved and developed as a diagnostic test for someone who might present to the emergency department with shortness of breath, and the physician really wasn't quite certain as to what was the cause for the shortness of breath. But in the past decade or so, it's evolved dramatically such that it can perform 2 potential functions. One is at a very early stage, as in when someone is asymptomatic, modest elevations can be predictive of someone who's going to go on and later develop heart failure. So this represents potentially an opportunity where you could address risk factors more aggressively and prevent the development of heart failure. And then a large trial is ongoing, because a lot of small trials have shown that you can take people who have heart failure, and just as we manage diabetes by following a blood sugar, we could use a blood test perhaps like this B-type natritic peptide to evaluate how well the patient's being treated. So normally we give a cocktail of medications, and we just try to do the best we can with that, try to make the patient as adherent as possible. But with the blood test, we may be actually able to give some feedback to both physicians and patients to determine how effective the therapy is going to be to prevent admissions and prevent death.
Let's take a phone call. This is Alex in Baltimore City. Alex, thanks for the call. Go ahead.
Good evening, Justin.
Good evening.
Is it true that what you eat really trigger heart disease?
Thanks very much for the phone call. And I was going to ask the same question from this standpoint. The advice for diet and exercise, we think of that as being designed to prevent heart attacks. Does the same advice also help with heart failure?
Yeah, very much so. So, as probably most people have at least heard in the press, there are new guidelines about the management of cholesterol. But before you even really get into the management of cholesterol, there's sort of the 4 major lifestyle characteristics, and that is diet, exercise, weight management, and not smoking. And all of them ultimately apply very well to heart failure as well, maybe through the same mechanism for preventing heart attacks and ultimately failure of the pump, but also through mechanisms that probably help prevent stiffness of the vasculature, stiffness of the heart muscle itself. And it's shown that, for example, regular exercise can make a big difference in reducing the risk of heart failure.
How much exercise are you talking about?
Really not very much exercise, and that's the great news. So at the recent American Heart Association meetings in Dallas this past November, there was a lot of focus on the importance of physical activity. So the guidelines suggest just 30 minutes of walking a day, 5 days a week. But it may be possible that as little as 15 minutes of what we call moderate physical activity, which is walking at a typical pace of 3 miles an hour on a flat surface might be enough to really retard the risk of both heart failure and myocardial infarction.
Let's take a call from Baltimore County. This is Danette. Danette, thank you very much for the call. Go ahead. Danette, are you there?
Hi, yes, I am.
Good. What's your question?
My question is this. I'm in a decade where a lot of my peers, we drink wine, and I notice if I've had a few glasses of wine, the next morning I kind of have a changed heart rate, seems to slow down, possibly a long, slow skip. Can you enlighten me on this? Should I stop drinking wine, or is it a hormonal issue?
Say that last part again. You think there's a skip?
Yeah, it's sort of like it delays a little bit. I can tell it's a slower pump, so I can definitely notice it. It's a little unnerving.
Okay, thanks very much for the call. We'll get you an answer on the air.
It's a great show.
Thanks so much.
Well, I don't know if I have a specific answer to that question. Certainly there's a lot of what we'd call epidemiologic evidence that moderate alcohol consumption of 1 to 2 glasses perhaps can reduce heart disease. In terms of rhythm disturbances with the heart, we know that binge drinking can be associated with developing an abnormal rhythm we call atrial fibrillation, even in very young people. It can happen in college-age students after a drinking binge, for example, and usually is self-limited. I don't think that's what's happening here, but in terms of causing a slower rate, I don't know of a lot of evidence for that, per se.
This is a good point for me to ask when you go to the doctor. And where would a general practitioner, internist be sufficient to talk about these issues versus seeing a cardiologist?
I think, for an issue like this, probably starting with your general practitioner would be fine, and then they can decide whether to make a referral or whether you can do a monitor where you wear a monitor for a day. It's called a Holter monitor, and they can evaluate that further if needed.
Have a couple of glasses of wine and see what the monitor
Right.
picks up. One more call. Ram in Anne Arundel County. Thank you for the call. Go ahead. Is this Ram?
Yes, I'm here.
You're on. Go ahead.
Thanks for giving me some time. Dr. Christopher, I have listened to your research papers and your pieces, and I learned a lot about your biomarkers method for the cardiology prevention. I take this matter with my physician and my cardiologist, and they refuse to order these kind of blood tests, what you are mentioning as BNP. So where should I go from here? I like
Great
to go
question.
with the diet
I'm
and
short on time, but Ram, let me get you an answer. He wants to know where he can get these sort of tests.
Okay. Well, it is important to mention that at this time, tests like this BNP or B-type natriuretic peptide are approved tests, but they're approved for the diagnosis of heart failure when someone is short of breath. These applications, find their way into the current set of guidelines for heart failure from the American Heart Association, American College of Cardiology. But what they do say at this point is that they could potentially be used for this application, but it's not definitive. Unlike checking a cholesterol, for example, for someone who might be at risk, or checking certain blood tests for a heart attack. For these particular applications, still in progress research-wise.
We'll leave it there. Doctor, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us for Direct Connection, and have a good night.
Tonight on MPT.
Antiques Roadshow is uncovering the treasures of the gem state.
Oh, I would have never guessed that whatsoever. Oh my goodness.
A piece? Oh my gosh. That's amazing to me.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Don't miss these amazing moments and more from Boise, Idaho, next time on Antiques Roadshow.
Tonight at 8 on MPT.
This is member-supported Maryland Public Television.
Come along with
with us on the next Maryland Farm and Harvest.
Dropping seeds from the air makes sense because it won't disrupt the topsoil.
Cover crops go back a long time.
You won't believe this. This is like a veritable buffet in here. Don't miss the next Maryland Farm and Harvest.
Tuesday night at 7 on MPT.
She really is. Like, as soon as I saw her, she just really stood out. All the details when you get really close, you can see all the different skin tones made out of the greens and the pinks. But from a distance, she just looks like a painting.
She does look like a painting from a distance, and interestingly, it is a tapestry. It's woven, but it is after a well-known